Bill, and I'm here today with Bob and Scott, and we're going to talk a little bit about Neil Young and his very busy schedule these days. He is working overtime, and it's kind of an inspiration to see a 77-year-old guy, just going into the studio and just working overtime, I think. This record that we're going to talk about came out just a couple of weeks ago. It's Neil with his famous backing band, Crazy Horse. And it's an interesting take. It's called World Record. And we're eager to hear what Bob has to say. Bob's a longtime fan of Neil and has been studying his catalog for years. And we're interested to get your firsthand observations. What do you think?
All right, thanks, Bill. Yeah, Neil Young would probably be in my top 10 list of favorite performers, especially when he teams up with Crazy Horse. And they create just, in my mind, incredible primitive rock and roll. And they create music like the title of one of his albums, it's Ragged Glory. So I always look with great anticipation when Neil hooks back up with the horse. And this is his third Crazy Horse album in as many years. And this was preceded by Colorado and then Barn. Both albums I really, really liked. And this one, yeah, not so much. And I have some issues with World Record. One is this album is basically a collection of 11 love songs to planet Earth. And Neil has always been a great environmentalist, and I do respect him for that. And before I start talking about the album, I do want to say that I believe we are in a climate crisis. I believe that it's real. I believe the science. So I admire Neil for taking this on and for remaining true to his roots. And some of the interviews that I've read here recently, Neil says, yeah, I'm still an old hippie. I believe in what I believed in back in the 60s. And, he's not afraid to stand up for that. So one of my problems with the album, though, is I kind of feel like I'm being preached to. And I certainly agree with the environmentalism. We talked about Midnight Oil at one point about some of the environmental causes they support. And I certainly endorse and support Neil's concern about the environment. But 11 songs gets to be a little much. And then some of the songs are just a little too simplistic in my mind. He writes like "Love Earth," such an easy thing to do. Then he declares you're not alone on this old planet. He has a song called, then he has lines like "No more war, only love." Some of this stuff is incredibly naive, and you may want to talk about peace and love and your fellow man all you want, but we're dealing with people. And, we've had wars since the beginning of time. We've got one going on in Ukraine right now. You're not going to get people to walk away from their baser nature. So some of it's kind of naive. One of the things that about Neil Young and Crazy Horse that I like is a lot of their music is kind of loose. It's not necessarily real sophisticated, but it's natural. On this album, I think they get a little too loose, and it just sounds like maybe it isn't completely finished. And the producer, Rick Rubin, even kind of alludes to that, because on the liner notes that come with Apple Music on this album, Rubin talks about how a lot of this music were just melodies that Neil Young would whistle while he was walking through the woods, and that they literally put it together in a couple days. And Rubin even says that after you listen to it, your first thought is, boy, I hope someday they're going to learn the songs. So it's a little too loose in some ways. It's kind of also all over the place in musical styles. We get some pump organ, we get piano stuff, we get acoustic stuff. The Crazy Horse and Neil Young that I really like is when they get down into the rock and roll trenches, and Neil straps on that black Les Paul and they just go after it. And there's a couple cuts on here that I do like, one called Break the Chain. And then there's a 15-minute song called Chevrolet that I really like. And this sounds like classic Crazy Horse. We've got the crunching guitars and the solos and stuff. Chevrolet, I really like. Neil is always been kind of a car guy. I'm a car guy, so I like Chevrolet. And Break the Chain has got, like I say, got that classic Neil Young Crazy Horse sound. But the rest of the album, and I just had a really kind of a hard time getting into it, which I hate to say about Neil Young and Crazy Horse because I love them so much, but this album just really didn't do it for me. And I also feel kind of guilty because, Neil's taken on this cause that we should all be much more serious about. So I feel a little guilty saying, yeah, I didn't get moved as much as I probably should have by this, but that's my quick take on World Record. I admire Neil for his passion, for his stands, his convictions. I just don't think he necessarily hit the mark on a lot of this album. So that's my quick take. I think you guys have got some opinions here also, so I'd love to hear them.
Scott, what do you think?
Uh, yeah, I think it's a good Neil Young and Crazy Horse album. It's nothing that we haven't heard before. I started to say it's like, I was going to make the joke, here's something you don't see every day. Neil Young releasing a new album. No, it doesn't happen every day.
No, every other day.
It just seems to happen every other week, right?
No, well, yeah, this is his 42nd.
But,
This is his 42nd album and his 13th with Crazy Horse. So yeah, the man's kind of prolific.
Yeah, and I mean, just in the past year, it seems like every time we turn around, he's coming up with either new album or new archive release or something. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is okay. Yeah, I didn't get repelled by the preaching like Bob does. I mean, it's just Neil being Neil, I think. What I got a little irritated with was he was on the Howard Stern show about a week before this album was released, around the same time, and I was listening, and he started going off in this rant and blaming the media, saying it's the media's fault that we're in a climate change crisis because the media refuses to cover this.
We could be talking about something that we might be able to do something about. People could work together from around the world to help and solve what it is that we got going on here.
But don't you think that you have to elect the right people who are concerned about climate change? I mean,
well, it really helps if you got the right leader. But the thing is, the people need to recognize that the media is not covering this story. I have a theory that the media not covering climate change is what's responsible for the uneasiness and the anger in the people.
It's like, it's like, come on, give me a damn break. Neil, you are the media, It's like, and if your message isn't getting out there the way you want it to get out there, that's your fault. That's not the media's fault,
Well, and I would also
it just kills me how, people blame the monolithic the media. What exactly is the media? Well, Neil is the media. So I just wanted to get that out there, But as far as an album, it's a fine Neil Young and Crazy Horse album. It's not an outside of the message that Neil is throwing out there, which is fine. I don't have any objection to it. But outside of that specific message that he's throwing out there, this is not an essential Neil Young and Crazy Horse album. It's a Neil Young and Crazy Horse album that we've heard 2 or 3 times before. And my one comment on it is that it seems kind of funny to me that he specifically put out this album to issue his message about the climate change crisis, and then like right at the end of it, he puts a 15-minute Crazy Horse jam on there about his love of old classic gas guzzling automobiles. It's like, well, okay, Neil's kind of messing. He screwed up his own message here with that one. I think. I don't know.
Well, here's my assessment is that he has certainly earned the right not to do what he wants, but what he needs is an editor. Speaking of the media, so
Yeah.
somebody needs to take him aside and say, you have a certain legacy here, and if you want to wield this power that you have, you need to be rapier sharp with it. You can't be kind of slapdash about your approach. And I mean, I was sort of embarrassed. I washed my ears out after I heard this record with Reactor, Neil Young at Crazy Horse React, which is a terrible record, but it was a lot better than this was. And the fault that I find with it is that uh, he's absolutely right. I mean, we are in a crisis, and we do need to do things, and we are all sort of hypocritical, even by pointing out the fact that he's not doing enough to write better songs to make us worry more about what we aren't doing. But there are artists out there who I heard this year who have done, I guess, what you could categorize as environmentally pointed stuff that's not quite so literal. I mean, it sounds like it's like a political email, like a fundraising email. That's how basic and rudimentary it is. And what's doubly disappointing is the production. Rick Rubin is famously attuned to the artists he works with, and he does great work. I mean, it sounds like Neil and Crazy Horse are in my living room. And what's scary about it is it's a very quiet thing. It's like Neil and Crazy Horse are in my living room, and I can hear myself think. It's crazy. I don't want that. I want real Crazy Horse. So I want more noise. I want more, less Jay Yoon lyrics and more something. And I think if Neil wants to take a little bit more time between releases, it might be in both the service of his message and the quality control that I think is necessary. Because otherwise, it's another Neil Young record. I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, it is just another, like I was saying, another Neil Young Crazy Horse record, nothing new. But my thing, he's on this thing now where he's been talking about it the last couple of 3 albums that he's released, especially with Barn, which I thought was a good one from about a year ago that was released, which is a new record that he recorded, not an archive record. And that was basically him and Crazy Horse going into this barn. He did the documentary of it, and just basically winging it. I mean, he was writing the songs as he was. I remember, he had a 2-mile walk from his home to this barn that he did every day with his dogs. He pretty much wrote the songs while he was walking, to the recording studio in his barn. But my point is that he's on a thing now where the best take, he's been saying this, the best take is usually always the first take, right? And he's just on this mission now that everything's going to be raw and from the heart and direct to it, and it's just, and it worked on Barn, but on this one, it's like it just seems to be a little sloppy. It's like that this might have been a much better record if he would have just spent a little time with it instead of just going in and laying down some tracks and then moving on to the next one, and not and
it's like the one thing
he likes raw, but this is just too raw.
How about just one good song? Nobody needs to put out an album. Put one good song that people can sing. I always think about this with McCartney. I mean, the guy can write a song that people can think about and sing. So he needs to do that and stop putting out albums. Unless you can put out 12 great songs, put out one great, fantastic song that everybody knows. Don't worry about it, Neil. So one first take of one good song. That's all I'm asking for. That's all.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to play the Shocking Pinks again, and it's going to screw me up forever because that doesn't even sound like Neil Young.
I liked your analogy. I liked your analogy, Bill, about they sound like they're in your living room because I mean you hear the countdowns to the songs. You can actually hear Rick Rubin at times, giving directions and stuff, and it literally sounds like somebody had a tape recorder going with a bunch of guys in your living room and said, "Hey, let's turn this into an album without doing any refinement." And I do love the raggedness of Crazy Horse. Like Scott said, yeah, this is a little too ragged. And my other big problem with it is you wrote some really weak lyrics if you want to talk about environment, like love Earth, and your love comes back to you. Love Earth, such an easy thing to do. Come on, Neil, you can do better than that. You've written some incredible freaking material. Now, Chevrolet, Neil has always been a car fanatic, but in his defense, Neil was also one of the early proponents about trying to electrify cars. Even
True.
took
Yeah.
big old mammoth cars and did convert it over, to running on batteries. So
That's not in this song.
well, yeah, it is though. If you look at the lyrics, he talks about different cars and stuff that he's kind of had, and he does lament about, wasting fuel and things like that. So it's an ode to the cars, but also at the same time he does acknowledge the impact that it's had on having those cars. So that I think is a little bit more of a complex, nuanced song. A lot of this stuff on here is just too simplistic. And it's like if you wanted to do an environmental statement, I think you would have done a better job with a fewer, better targeted songs rather than 11 songs, many of which are very weak, all basically covering the same topic. So, and I understand Neil's 77. Maybe he feels an urge to get as much of this stuff out as he can while he still can. And yeah, I mean, I admire him. He's releasing albums. He's doing the archive stuff. He certainly isn't letting any moss grow under him. But yeah, this one, other than those couple cuts I mentioned, it just to me is a really weak effort.
Well, guys, thanks for your feedback and commentary. There you have it, folks. That's our latest weighing in on a new release. Stay tuned for more stuff to come. We've got a lot of interesting things in the pipeline. Make sure you subscribe and let us know what you think. And we will see you soon. Bye.
We could be fixing this. We could do it together. Everybody could do it. All the leaders could do it. It's right there, right in front of us. There's nothing hiding it, except the media won't talk about it because they're self-serving and they got to get out of that vibe and start serving the people and doing the right thing.